in the Africa. Okay, reflecting its importance to society.
Magutom ko.
And in the fire legend, Persian literature, fire was discovered during a fight of the hero with a dragon. A stone that the hero used as weapon missed and struck the rock. Thus, light shone forth and human beings saw fire for the first time. Okay, no? So from before, hurling stone was the best weapon like what David used to kill Goliath. Katong, sabay tawag to, like, so mga tirador man ha? Karang mga tirador siguro. Okay, no? Okay, in the fire in religion, fire was placed. Okay, hold on. Religion, okay. Fire has placed a central rule in religion. It has been used as God. Okay, kaya example, the Indo-Iranian Agni. Agni means, I think it is the god of Agni. Means the god of fire. Okay, Agni means the god of fire. So, they worship fire as gods and that's for their belief. Ilan ang totoo. Or for use their, or they use that as, maybe they worship that as God. Okay, as according to Exodus 20 verse 3. Okay, God said, "You shall have no other gods before me." So we cannot worship any elements as gods because there is only one God, or sa mua pa ng term, Allahu Wahid, sa mga Muslim. So there is only one God, but for the fire in religion, mostly, in particular sa India, tagod sila yung mga gods nila dito. Katong such as, dagan ko na siya, in Africa, napunta sila ilang mga gods nila. So as in the Bible, in the Exodus, there is, the God said that there is only one God. Thou shalt not worship any other God before me. In the Greek mythology, okay, Prometheus was bestowed with godlike powers when he stole the god's fire to give it to human. Okay, muna siya sa mga Greek mythology. Kani si Prometheus, actually, he is one of the titans. And then, if regards to, kani magugila sa una, from before, there are these mga gods of elements, di ba? Such as the god of fire, the god of water, the god of wind, so on and so forth. Then, I am not very particular for the water or so on, but for the fire, I think there was this kaning si Hephaestus, the son of Zeus. So, he is considered as the god of fire. Kaya sa mga Greek mythology na mga nangyayari. Okay, so let's get back to Prometheus, how he related to the fire. Prometheus is one of the titans and known as the benefactor of humanity. Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus were given the task to create humanity and providing humans and all the animals on earth with the endowments they would need to survive. When it was time to create a human being who was to be superior to all other living creatures, they found that they were already out of resources. And then with that, because with regards to the resources, they already have given it to the animals, such as ito mga courage, strength, swiftness, and feathers, fur, and other protective coverings were happen na sa animals. So with that, nalibog na si Prometheus and katuyang brother nga si Epimetheus. Libog na gid sila gid how to create man as the most stronger human creatures on earth. Nalibog na, nahatag naman na tanan regards to the biggest animal. There you are, maybe the elephant, diba? The heaviest is the rhinoceros. What else? And then with regards to the longest, diba? Or the tallest animal, napot ay kanang giraffe. Giraffe ba, no? Giraffe. And then regards to the fastest animals, napot ay zebra. So naglibog na sila. Bakit? Nahatag na naman tala sa animal, tanan sa animals. So how to do that? So with that, his brother Epimetheus, so he asked his brother Prometheus to take the fire from the gods. So with that, Prometheus stole the fire from the gods and then he shared it to the humans. So with that, with the use of fire, considered na siya as one of the forces. So with that fire, of course, madlok na itong animals. Kaya nasipyat makuno sila from before. Una-una naman sila ang animals, gihatag na ng resources. Di ba? Di mo na ang lalaki, wala ko ni balahibo. Kaya tuwan naman sa birds. Kuno, di ba? Pag sa lumana, hinay po kayo, nahatag naman sa isda, the fish. Di ba? Pag dalagan po, already to the zebra. Okay. So, for the early means of producing fire, ito, 2 sticks. Okay, for the 2 sticks, one of the oldest methods of starting fires consisting of rubbing 2 sticks together. So the rubbing creates friction between the sticks and the friction generates heat. So the heat eventually causes the wood to ignite. So with that, of course, there are fire, diba? Kanang 2 sticks, usapan na lang pag-continue, no? Shall we say, kapasa irab-rab ka sticks, ana? I do not have my picture, mga very good. So you just rub them together until they reach the ignition point or kanayang ignition temperature that will light up the tinder. So kanang tinder is a very light material that can be used as fuel for the fire. Para makastart sa fire natin tinder. Rub lang ng 2 sticks. After it reaches the ignition point, there you are, the fire. So for the hand drill, this is a more efficient method of rubbing 2 pieces of wood together, rapidly spinning a stick of wood vertically against another piece of wood. So with that, it can generate enough friction and heat to cause the wood to ignite. Okay, ito mga hand drill. Okay. The next one. Okay, striking flint. Another ancient method of starting fire consists of striking flint against another flint to produce sparks. So maybe you can use both stones or both metals, or maybe you can use metals to strike the stone. Well, mostly like common na kaya na siya, makita ko na striking flint. You use one metal as well as you use one stone. We take, okay, spark, there is this spark. And then the last one, the very common, and this is very common and very easy way to produce fire. As long as there is this sun. Okay, the magnifying glass focuses the sunlight on tinder, and the energy of the sunlight hits the tinder until it ignites. So you just simply place the magnifying glass in diagonals or shall we say perpendicular to the sun with the tinder to absorb the radiation, passes through the lens and wait until it reaches the ignition point. Okay, nana lang. Diba? Mostly when we were young, pagdula mo ng mga glasses, diba? You can see the either the concave or the convex glass. You can use both of them to ignite your tinder. Okay, two methods of producing fire. The first one is the friction method. So in the friction method, friction increases the temperature of a combustible material from kindling to ignite temperature. Example, 2 sticks or the hand drill. Back to my hand drill. Like, do you have the stick? Yeah, or kumadili, you're rubbing them together. So that is what we call the friction method. And then for the percussion method, this method generates a spark to set kindling a fire. Example, striking flint. You have a stone as well as a metal, so you can strike them to create a spark. Okay. Note, fire may also be generated by using a lens or curved reflector to focus and converge the rays of the sun on combustible materials. So this combustible materials is the fuel, or shall we say kanang tender. Example, the magnifying glass, di ba? Place it perpendicular to the sun or diagonal sa badiya. Okay. Okay, the chemistry of fire. Three main components are needed for fire. The first, so there must be a fuel to burn. Okay, there are sources of fuel such as katong solid, what else? The liquid as well as the gas. Diba? Kanang tulo, oh. For the solid fuel, the molecules are closely packed together. For the example, the organic or the natural materials. Gusto mo mga example of the organic? Okay, let me ask you. Gusto mo kayo mga examples of mga organic materials with regards to the solid? Okay, just Mark, do you have any thought about it or any idea about the organic or the natural materials? Example. Arqueliano. What about Ilona?
Wood, sir.
Wood, okay, very good. It is the wood, considered as one of the examples for the organic materials or the natural materials from the word natural. So therefore, it is based on, shall we say, from the wood, di ba? O, ano siya diya? O, so may lang nga mga natural na. Okay. What about for the inorganic or the synthetic materials? So man na siya. Okay, let me ask Veles.
Yes, sir.
Yes, kanang inorganic or synthetic materials. Example, is atuang solid fuel, composed man guna siya mga organic or inorganic or even the mga metallic solid materials. Okay, katong mga metallic, di ba? So what about for the inorganic?
Kanang kahoy, sir.
It's not inorganic, synthetic ba or synthetic?
Plastic, sir.
It's part of organic.
Plastic, sir.
Good. Plastic, rubber, mga synthetic man na sila, ha? They are being, kung maguna sila, good, actually, giprocess man na sila from kung asa na siya diya nga mga laboratory ba na diya, di ba? Especially the making of the plastic, the rubber. But for the organic, natay katong mga woods, di ba? Unsa pa man diya. Aside sa woods, naapod day paper. Okay, ha? Muna sila. For the solid. Di ba? Even if you're ka ng mga, kung sa mga gamit ninyo diya, you can still consider that as solid. Like, yun nga, mga cellphone. So, pwede lang diya po na siya as synthetic. Okay, what about for the liquid fuel? The molecules are closely packed. So, closely packed. So, for the liquid, or example is, unsa may example for the liquid? Okay. I mean, let me call on Marinho. Example for the liquid fuel. So, if you talk of fuel, it doesn't mean that it is the gasoline fuel man. No. Dili na siya kingunana, ha? Fuel is actually one of the elements of fire. Yan ang fuel. So muna siyang tulo po na siya ka-sources niya diya. The solid, the liquid, as well as the gas. So what about for the liquid? As for the solid, we have the woods, papers, isa pa, plastics, rubbers. What about for the liquid? Sige, ingog mo, adi. O doon mo kabalohan.
Thinner, sir. Mga lacquer thinner.
Mga, okay, very good. Mga lacquer thinner, kano, di ba? Mga, what else? Mga gasoline sa inyo ang motor. Okay, that is considered as the flammable liquid fuel and chemicals. Okay, ha? Kana siya, mga thinner, so on so forth. Mga gas. Literally gas. Ito mga kerosene, kumbaga. Okay. What about for the gas fuel? So, what about for the gas fuel? So, the molecules are free to move. So, example, unsa man? Example for the gas. you can see that in your kitchen. Na siya dito. Diba? So na siya.
Sa LPG, sir.
Okay, very good. The LPG, the toxic hazardous gases that are capable of ignition, such as motong LPG. Diba? Kato siya mga gaseous malak sila. Yes, okay. And then that's for the first one. Then for the second element, so there is this oxygen. Okay, the oxygen. Okay, oxygen must be available. After all, combustion is essentially an oxidation process that gives off heat and light. Okay, this is now for the oxygen. Diba? Very common naman ang oxygen, no? Like, because in the elements of fire, tulong nga as well as kaning heat. Tanto nga heat. So, for the third one, of course, for the oxygen sa tahal, let's get back for the oxygen. For the oxygen, you cannot produce fire, or shall we say, you cannot create a fire without the oxygen. Especially, kung maghaling ta, di ba? Kung fuel na to dyan, sugnod. Try to light it up. Kung makalay ba, di ba? Di maglisod na siya because of the lacking of the sources of oxygen. Okay, in the oxygen, there must be at least mga 16% to 21% that is enough to produce fire at to create a fire. Ano lang ang percentage niya from 16 to 21%. Okay, man ilan na. And then for the third one, there must be a heat or ignition source that allows the fire to begin. Okay, if one area of the triangle is missing, diba, as you can see the triangle. So if one area of that is missing, there is no fire exist. Tinuod gina siya. Therefore, every element is not autonomous as they can stand alone. So without the aid of each other, but instead they are dependent to each other. Eh dili man na siya katon like kana siya kung ma-fuel lang madagkot na siya, no, dili man na sila mga autonomous. So they are dependent to each other. So try to light up a candle and place it inside an inverted bottle, diba? The inverted bottle glass, the kuti ang candle. Here the bottle. Example, this is not the candle. Try to light a candle, and then sulay nag siradia. We will see if the light can still sustain. So dili ko na siya because you are suffocating the fire. Diba? Imuha man siyang tuok kumbaga. Okay? So lacking of oxygen na siya. So with that, mamatay gud ang fire. Okay. So in these three elements, so especially the fuel, kaning fuel is considered as the oxidizing agent man siya, guys, because it undergoes for the kanang gitawag na itong pyrolysis. And you know what is pyrolysis? Pyrolysis is something that can be combusted. Diba? Kanang baga ba? Kumbaga, you try to light up your cigarette. Diba? O dukot na diya. Diba mo na siya kanang gidukot niya. That is pyrolysis. Okay. So there are these, okay, 5 triangle and the 3 ingredients necessary for the most fire. Well, there are 2 theories of fire. From before, natin kita na itong fire triangle theory. Kani. Diba? Ana siya diya as you can see on your screen. So, mana siya to the first theory is the fire triangle theory. So, it depicts that there must be the presence of the 3 elements such as the oxygen, the heat, and fuel, or else fire is not possible to exist. Muna siya gistorya diya sa according to the theory of fire triangle theory. And then it is seconded by the fire tetrahedron theory. Okay, the second theory. The first theory said that yes, the fire tetrahedron theory said that yes, the first theory is correct. There must be the presence of the oxygen, the fuel, as well as tungo sa ato, yeah? As well as the heat. Muna gistorya dia ni fire tetrahedron. He said that yes, it's correct. It is correct that there must be the presence of these three elements, but the fire tetrahedron theory says that there must also a chain reaction. So okay, so the first theory, the fire triangle theory, should not rejected the fire the chain reaction. Muna siya iyapong gi-propose diya sa fire tetrahedron that there must be a chain reaction, because without the chain reaction there is no fire at all. So like daog, yeah, di ba? Naman ang mga chain reactions such as kanang mga abo na, abo, di ba? Di ta kitag fire na walay abo. Kada mo pa na ilang storya diya. Pag may usok, may kalayo yan. Yeah? May apoy gana siya, kumbaga. Okay, now, the triangle illustrates the rule that in order to ignite and burn a fire requires these three elements. The fire is presented or extinguished by removing any one of them. Diba? Naman tong tulo ka elements na to for the first theory. So, fire is naturally occurred when the elements are combined in the right mixture. Okay. So without sufficient heat, a fire cannot begin. Diba? Kailangan din siya kumbaga, it is actually divided. So, and it cannot continue. Heat can be removed by dosing with water. So the water turns to steam and the steam is further heated, taking the heat with it. So therefore, natin gitawag nga, that is what we call cooling. Later on, ma-discuss natin na later on about that. So it is cooling. In cooling, it is the removing of the heat. Diba? Wala ko na siya, use the water in order to extinguish the fire, diba? Or to eliminate the first or the heat element of the fire. So the second one, without fuel, a fire will stop. Diba? Fuel can be removed naturally as where the fire has consumed all the burnable fuel, or manually by mechanical or chemical removing the fuel from the fire. So unsa man siya, that is the smoldering. Okay, it is smoldering. So therefore, you remove the fuel. So there, it is the starvation na siguro. It is the starvation. So with that, kumbaga imo siyang gikuhaan og sugnod. So gigutom na siya, Okay, di ba mo na siya kitawag na starving the fire. Kuhaan mo siyang fuel. So gigutom na. Without that, so no more source, no more fuel, so mapalong with siya. So that is for the smoldering. And then for the other one, for the last one, without sufficient oxygen, a fire cannot begin, or it cannot continue. So with adequate oxygen concentration, the combustion velocity gets lower. So you are trying to suffocate the fire. Diba? Muna pa nakita mo ito nga starvation. Adya na itong smoldering rather, guys. I'm sorry for that. I stand corrected. That is for the smoldering. So you are suffocating the fire. And then for the fuel, there is this starvation. So you remove the fuel. Diba? Nagutom na siya. And then for the heat, it is the cooling. So imo ang shall we say, take off ang heat by the use of fire. If there is fire, the methods of extinguishing it are through cooling, maybe. Diba? You put water to eliminate the heat. Smoldering, you put something that can suffocate the fire, or to eliminate the oxygen. And starving or starvation, you remove the fuel to make the fire hungry or craving to death, or with that, mamatay gutong kalayo. There are this classification of fire. Fire classification in firefighting, fires are identified according to one or more fire classes. Each class designates the fuel involved in the fire, and thus the most appropriate extinguishing agent. So fire has, or shall we say, fires have been classified into 4 groups: the class A, class B, class C, and class D. But wala nila din na-include ang Para, I think I forgot to add this. Kaya mo man na ilang gihatag niya. But there is this also the class K or class F fire. Ana siya. So now for the class A fires. Fires involving organic or natural fuel and inorganic or synthetic fuel. Diba? For the organic, we have the woods, papers, or the natural fuel. And the inorganic is the plastics, rubbers. Okay, and now for the synthetic fuel. That is for the class A fire. And then for the class B fires, fires involving flammable liquids. Okay, such as, katong ingon ninyo ganina, di ba? Such as katong mga gasoline, kerosene, okay ha? And then for the class C fires, fires involving flammable gases. Okay, unsa man na sila diya? Diba? O flammable gases, gases. Rather, murag there is something wrong with this. Murag ang class C fire, murag sayot mi siya. No. For the class C fire, I think it is the, di ba na ma-edit, no? It is the katong mga electricity. Okay, for the class C fire. It is for the electricity. Parang wala ni siya, magsipyat ni sa source nila. I just actually seen this. Karon ko na nakita. So for the class C fire, it is the electricity. O take the notes for that ha. For the class A, we have the woods, di ba? Katong mga plastics, papers. For the class B, have flammable liquids such as kanang gitawag na to nga kerosene, gasoline. And then for the class C fires involving such as katong mga electricity. Okay. And then for the class D fires involving metals. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Mo-order siya ha. Mo-order siya diya. Okay. Okay, for the class D fires involving mga metals na diya. Okay. And then for the class K fires, or class F manang naa sa ilaha diya. So for the class F or class K, fires involving cooking oil. Mga cooking oil fats, or shall we say, the fire can be found in the kitchen. Okay, there are classes of fire extinguishers such as kanang gitawag na to nga class A extinguisher. It is the water-based extinguisher. Okay, it is to cool the heat. And then for the class B extinguisher, this is a carbon dioxide gas. Okay, and then for the dry chemical and foam, we have the class C. Okay, and siya both the carbon dioxide and the dry chemicals. Okay, for the class B fire, we have the dry powder. So it covers the burning metal and provide a smothering blanket. So therefore, each class can put out a different type of fire. Muna siya the basis sa mga classification. There are these types of extinguishers such as the A, B, C powder fire extinguisher. So powder extinguishers are effective for class A, B, and C fires since it is not an electrical conductor and since it can effectively break the chain reaction in a liquid or gas fire, something a water extinguisher cannot do. So in this type of extinguisher, nice na kani siya with regards katulang sa class A nga extinguisher. Because for the class A alone extinguisher, mostly it is a water-based. So you can use that for the class A fire lang. But you cannot use that especially in the class C fire for the electricity. Especially for the metals as well. Class D, you cannot use that. And maybe for the class B fire, for the atong mga flammable diya, mga such as fuel, dili sa po niya siya pwede. Because it can spread the fire. So like, buga na diya, mo spread na po ng fire. So an ABC powder fire extinguisher has numerous advantages as it is a multi-purpose extinguisher and is therefore one of the most common extinguishers to have on hand. A powder extinguisher sprays a very fine chemical powder. composed most commonly of kanang gitawag mga monoammonium phosphate. So this acts to blanket the fire and suffocate it. Okay. For the carbon dioxide fire extinguisher, the carbon dioxide extinguisher does exactly that, extinguishes, of course, kato mga carbon dioxide. By doing so, it removes oxygen from the fire. So effectively suffocating it of oxygen. So it is perfect for use of Class B fires that involve flammable liquids and on electrical fires. A carbon dioxide fire extinguisher is one of the cleanest type of extinguishers to use, as it leaves no residue and requires no cleanup. Where the wet chemical fire extinguisher is ideal for a kitchen setting and Class K fires. Okay, for the Class K fires, these are the fires that can be found in the kitchen. Now, however, it can also be effective for Class A fires where a material such as wood or paper has caught fire. Okay. The next one, water mist fire extinguisher. This type of extinguisher releases microscopic water molecules that fight the fire on a variety of levels. Thus, a water mist extinguisher is safe and effective for use on Class A fire, B, C, and K fires. So the most versatile of the set, the water mist extinguisher uses a newer technology that works across most classes of fire. So we have also here the foam fire extinguisher. Foam fire extinguishers are suitable for Class A and the flammable liquid of Class B, though not effective for gaseous fires. They spray a type of foam that expands when it hits the air and blankets the fire. This blanket prevents the vapors from rising off the liquid to feed the fire, thus starving it of fuel. Also, because the foam is mixed with water, it has a cooling effect as well. So foam extinguishers are some of the best for liquid fires, such as gasoline fires, but can also be used as Class A fires involving solid combustibles like wood, the foam. Then the last one, the clean agent fire extinguisher. A clean agent fire extinguisher is a type of gaseous fire suppression stored in its liquid form. When it is sprayed and hits the air, it converts to its gas, from which is non-conductive, safe for use while humans are present. So, dili siya ka ng makahelo. Kumbaga, leaves no residue and has a very short atmospheric lifetime, making it eco-friendly. So the gas, often composed of halon, extinguishes fire by reducing the oxygen levels and impeding the chain reaction. Because it is non-conductive and so clean, it is ideal for rooms or businesses filled with electrical or computer equipment. So they are most commonly used for Class B and C fires. Okay, now so for the methods of extinguishing a fire. So before we remove, so is there any clarifications with regards to the classifications of fire? Clarifications or questions? Hello?
None, sir. None.
Wala lang, okay lang?
Ito ba, sir?
Okay. So wala po nila nga tulong ni. Let me call.
Wala.
Last sir.
O,
Wala,
Arceliano.
wala, sir. Kuhan na, sir. Putol-putol akong kuhan, sir. Kay ulan kayo, sir, ba? Putol-putol kayo mong tingin, sir. Unstable akong kuhan, sir. Data.
What about the sa inyo, Arceliano? Putol-putol ako, dili lang sa Korea. Is it okay?
Dili lang, sir.
Wala, okay. What about Saga? Are you still there?
Okay, sir.
Okay lang tanan,
Okay
no?
na, sir.
Sparsha.
Okay lang, sir. Okay lang, sir.
Good, ha? Okay. So let's proceed now to the methods of extinguishing a fire. Okay, simple lang na sa siya. So cooling. So the first one is the cooling as one of the methods of extinguishing a fire. Earlier I mentioned about that, di ba? When we talk about katong mga usap siya na sa fire niya, di ba? Especially katong mga elements, but how to remove them. So for that, for the first one is the cooling. So cooling, or also what we call the or shall we say limiting temperature by increasing the rate at which heat is lost from the burning material. So you cool the heat. So atong gi-remove in cooling, what we removed in cooling is the heat. So this is one of the most common methods of extinguishing a fire by cooling with the use of most sa may gamiton ana in cooling. May mga tanan ko unsa may kalamitan gamito nato to cool a fire. Gi-remove man nato ang heat. Okay. James.
Water, sir, or extinguisher?
Is the water, di ba? We use water to cool the heat. Okay, for the cooling, the first one is they remove, or in cooling, it removes the kanang gitawag na tong heat. Okay. So this process depends on cooling the fuel to point where it does not produce sufficient vapor to burn. Diba? Kahit is being removed. Okay, kay cool man nato diya, diba? Ang heat na so na-remove na nato. So we have the fuel. Bugahan tong tubig, so gi-remove. Dili necessarily ang fuel mo gi-remove because it is the starvation or starving man na siya, starving the fire, but it is the heat that we remove in cooling. But for the smoldering, limiting oxygen by preventing air from reaching the set of the fire to allow the combustion process to reduce the oxygen content in the confined atmosphere until it extinguishes per se or itself. So with that, if the oxygen supply to the burning material can be sufficiently reduced, diba, natangtang, burning will cease. Okay, mapundog ito siya. Okay, example, smothering a pan with fire blanket or wet cloth to suffocate the fire or remove the oxygen. Diba? Like in the kitchen, common kayo, diba? In the kitchen for the smothering. Diba? Of course, when we are cooking, diba? There is this what we call kanang gitawag na to mga heat convection, diba? Inside the kanang cooking pan. Yeah, from the outside of the cooking pan or the cooking pan itself, it is the heat conduction. Diba? There is this direct contact from the fire or flame to the metal, to your pan. But inside there is this what we call the convection, the heat convection. And the last one is the radiation man to, diba? The radiation is something that we cannot see but we can feel. But like the radiation of the sun, diba? Muna siya mga radiation. So in this smoldering, diba, you have there the cooking pan. Butangan mo mantika. So once it reaches the ignition temperature, there you are the fire. Diba? Umon ka na mo, kalayo na siya. Diba? Kung matarantar ta, what is the best thing to remove the fire on the cooking pan? Okay, Reynel. Diba? Nagaluto ka, gaprito, matay kay ni kalayo man, ha? Diba? Kaya ang vapor magudaan na idunya once mainit na nakaayo, so with that, it reaches now to the ignition temperature niya. So with that, kalayo na siya. There you are the kalayo. So unsa may the best ana nato to remove the fire from your cooking pan? Sparsha.
Pwede naman kuhan, sir. Pwede kuhan.
Unsa? You use?
Takloban naman siya para makukuha ang kalayo niya, sir.
Okay, very good. Pwede po siya. You're going to cover it. So therefore, it is the smothering. So you suffocate the oxygen. Diba? Gi-remove. You cannot use water to that. Bata, karon kabalo na ta. But when we were young, even I experienced that. When there was this fire on the cooking pan, I used water I used water because I thought that the water could eliminate the fire, but no. Instead, it could spread out the fire. So happy
Kaya ang water sir mo, imong kanang water sir mo kusog mo siya kalayo sir.
Yes, very good.
Takloban na jud siya sir.
So the best thing for that is to cover it, or maybe you can use the kanang mga wet cloth. Di ba? Muna imong itabon dito, di ba? So gi-suffocate na nato ang oxygen diya, di ba? O gi-remove nato ang oxygen. Okay, nagets ano from calling to smothering. Di ba? Sayo na kayo siya pagsabot. And what about for the starvation or starving? Okay. The third one, limiting fuel by removing potential fuel from the vicinity of the fire. Removing the fire from mass of combustible materials, or by dividing the burning materials into smaller fires that can be extinguished more easily. So in some cases, so a fire can be extinguished simply by removing the fuel source, di ba? Also, this may be accomplished in a number of ways, such as stopping the flow of liquid or gaseous fuel, removing solid fuel in the path of the fire, or allowing the fire to burn until all the fuel is consumed. Okay? So, this is the removal of the fuel to stop the fire from conflagration, or from conflagrating it. Diba? So, we have there the fire. So, let's get back to our example na po. Diba? The first one is the smothering. We remove the heat. The second one is for the cooling, we remove the heat, and then for the smothering, we remove the oxygen, and then for the starving, we remove the fuel. So there are these ways: either you let it, shall we say, burn until it consumes or you let it fire until it consumes the fuel, or maybe you remove the fuel. So muna siya best way diya to remove the fire and starving. So kumbaga, kikwaan mo siya pagkaon. Okay, no? Ana lang ibtan mo siya og pagkaon niya. So with that, gutom good siya. Patay ang fire. Okay. And then, with the last one, the chemical flame inhibition. This is the fourth and the final way of extinguishment. So this can be accomplished through sun-dry chemical and halogenated agents. So these agents interrupt the combustion reaction and stop flaming. This method is effective on gas and liquid fuels because they must flame to burn. Okay, libog sana ay flame na po fire. Gusto ikalayan sa flame, gusto ko ikalayan sa fire. Actually, so if we talk about fire is actually, it is some kind of mga oxidizing process na siya. It is the oxidation process of combustion. If we talk of fire, but for the flame, it is the, shall we say, it is the hot glowing gases. For the example, for the flame, doon man nakaklase siya, naatay luminous flame or the non-luminous flame. For the luminous flame, try to lighter dire. Diba? Try to light up a candle. Diba? That is a luminous flame. A flame from a wood, diba? Candle. For the non-luminous, more on mga Bunsen burner, such as mga Bunsen burner o kanang mga gasol. Diba? In short na lang For the luminous flame, it is the color yellow. Okay, from the candle, mostly mohata with light. Diba? And then for the non-luminous, it is the color blue fire. Itong init kayo, diba? Mostly we can see that in our kanang mga gas tube. Okay, muna silang mga klase niya. Okay, now, for the heat. Okay. Heat is the energy possessed by a material or substance due to molecular activity. In physics, heat is the transfer of energy from one part of a substance to another, or from one body to another by virtue of a difference in temperature. So that is for the heat. So not agree. We have here now. Okay, so there are these heat productions, or there are 5 ways to produce heat. The first one is the chemical. So chemical produced heat is the result of rapid oxidation. So that is for the chemical, di ba? Mostly mga chemicals usama na siya diya. Like itong mga gas, di ba? O ano siguro, di ba? The chemicals. For the mechanical heat is the product of friction. Okay, mostly the rubbing of, example, the rubbing of 2 sticks together to generate enough heat as an example. Diba? Like, kanang mga kuhan, like, maybe mga engine ba, just necessarily kang that's siguro kanang mga engine dugay, no? Mga part of the mechanical na siya siguro. Kaya katungod ba na ito ang iyang pumping niya sa iyang kanang, so tawagan niya kanang, kalimutan ko, pumping na siya mga pumping niya da inside the engine. Okay. Frictional heat. The heat generated by movement between 2 objects in contact with each other. Diba? O kana kung sa engine pa, let's get back to mga piston ba na niya, no? Piston, saying grab. Hantod, okay, mo spark siya dito. What else? O, diba? For the friction sparks, the heat generated in the form of sparks from solid objects striking each other. Most often, at least one of the objects is metal. Okay, muna siya mga mechanical such as kaninyong lighter. Diba? The metal as well as naman na siya katong para mo spark siya. Diba? With the use of the gaseous niya diya, muna misiga na. But without that, wala na sulod, you keep on rolling your kuhan, your lighter, there you are, or you keep on pressing your lighter, or maybe your gasol. Diba? Mo spark na siya dito. Okay, heat of compression. The heat generated by the forced reduction of gaseous volume. Diesel engines ignite fuel vapor without a spark plug by the use of this principle. Muna siya sa ato ang piston kung ay gasoline, so there you are, the heat compression. For the electrical, okay, electrical heat is the product of arcing, shorting or other electrical malfunction. Poor wire connections, too much resistance, a lost ground, and too much current flowing through an improper size wire are other sources of electrical heat. Okay, very common the electricity, especially when there is this mga lost contact of your electricity between these 2 wires. Okay, most spark siya diya. So with that, so because of this spark, and of course, outside of the wire, there is this, itawag ng mga rubber, so it is enough, di ba? It is enough to produce fire. Kaya pag spark, ang atuang rubber, it is a very light material. So with that, kalayo siya sunog. Especially the substandards, di ba? They use scotch tapes, di ba? Tapes, so kuyaw ka na siya. Okay, excuse. Okay. Compressed gas. When a gas is compressed, its molecular activity is greatly increased, producing heat. Okay, katong mga compressed gas. Normally sa una pa na, they used gas, di ba? Katong mga source of fire na to. Di ba? Katong mga sabi tawag nila sa mga Petromax. Okay, the Petromax. The nuclear. Okay. Okay, nuclear energy is the product of splitting or fusing of atomic particles. So we have there the fission or fusion respectively. The tremendous heat energy is a nuclear power plant produced steam to turn steam turbines. Okay, natay nuclear fission and fusion. So the heat generated by either the splitting or combining of atoms. Okay, so like, diba, if we talk of the fission, it is the splitting of the atoms. Then for the fusion, it is the combining of the atoms. Okay, and take the notes for this, ha? Solar energy is the energy from the sun as the main source, diba? So wala nila lang i-include ang kanang solar energy. Supposedly that should be included actually and should not be rejected in this and this kanang gitawag methods the heat production rather. So what about for the heat transfer? Diba, na-mention ko na ako na earlier. So for the conduction is the transfer of energy through matter from particle to particle. Heat may be conducted from one body to another by direct contact of the two bodies or by an intervening heat conducting medium. So for the conduction, so there you are na. You have now the fried pan, diba? Or the cooking pan. So you have now the cooking pan. So with that, in your cooking pan, example this, diba? So you have the lighter. So with the flame, diba? So there is this direct contact between the metal and the flame. So that is the conduction. Diba? Later on, you observe nagkainit siya. Okay, ha? There is this heat or hot, naging hot siya. Okay. Convection is the transfer of heat by the actual movement of the one matter. Okay, transfer of heat by the movement of air or liquid. So there is this vapor. Now, there is this vapor. So the vapor can also produce fire once it reaches the ignition point niya or the kanang gitawag nato nga the ignition temperature. So lay anak, di ba? Butang dia og you place the cooking pan, butang ig oil, di ba? Butang then flame down the pan. So with that, later on, once it reaches the ignition temperature, of course, there you are the fire. O kalayog na siya. Okay, that is for the convection, di ba? Inside that is what we call the convection. Ang yang kainit dia, aso tumayo yung vapor niya, ang yang vapor, sobras kainit, kalayo na gina siya. Kamay ng dagkot anak, kalayo sila. Okay, for the radiation, electromagnetic waves that directly transport energy through space, di ba? Radiation is actually, we cannot see this. We cannot see a radiation, but we can feel that, especially when we are under the sun rays. But di na to makita ko ng kainit, but we can feel it until pagka-sunburn ka. That's for the radiation. Okay, there are these three heat transfers, such as the conduction. It is direct contact between the metal and the fire. Convection, there is this mga vapor niya dia, vapor niya. And the radiation. Okay. Nala siya mga electromagnetic waves that it travels through motion or through shall we say atmosphere. Okay. The next one, the dangerous behavior of fire. So before we proceed, before we move, any clarifications? Is there any clarification? Guys, okay lang. So nakuha lang yung tulo ha, with regards to the conduction, convection, and radiation, so that we can now proceed to the dangerous behavior of fire. Okay. So fire is fatal when the following conditions occurred. The backdraft, flashover, bite back, and flash fire. It is very dangerous. For the backdraft, it is the sudden and rapid or violent burning of heated gases in a confined area that occurs in the form of explosion. So this may occur because of improper ventilation. So if a room is not actually properly ventilated, highly flammable vapors may be accumulated such that when a door or window is suddenly opened, so the room violently sucks the oxygen from the outside, and simultaneously a sudden combustion occur, which may happen as an explosion. So kuya ay siya, no, that is why before the firefighters enter the room, they feel first the wall or maybe the door or the window using their hands, di ba? Kanailang kamot lang. In particular, the back side of their hands. Let's say, for example, this is not the room. ikapon nila na or kani ilang gamiton to fill the wall or the door or the kanang gitawag tong window, because you cannot enter directly inside the room wherein it is suspected that it is now of course covered by the fire. Ayog sa abriana, or else there is this what we call the explosion, and it is very dangerous. Sometimes that is why sometimes they find ways for the firefighters. Gaman na sila mga gamay bangag siguro dia, hindi sila paagi before entering, or kung na ay window hinanay mag-abri, not directly to open it widely, but instead slowly siguro or they find ways. Sometimes they use this, gamit na sila mga apps, bukon lang to dito sa side, di ba? Okay, inana na siya. That is for the backdraft, so it is very dangerous because it can cause an explosion. It is caused by the improper ventilation maguna inside of the room. Mura na siya like in a balloon, di ba? If you use such air, kanang gitawag to nga halon, di ba? Halons ba? Kanang nga halons nga air. So it is inside the balloon, of course, mulupad na sa taas. Because of this radiation from the sun, mubutog na siya diya. Kaya nga naman, ang iyang ignition point, gi-reach naman siya inside sa iyang oxygen. Mura po na inside the room, ang oxygen niya, di ba? Puno na kayo na. Kamang bikil, explode yun. Okay, flash over. The second one is the flash over. So it is the sudden ignition of accumulated radical gases produced when there is incomplete combustion of fuel. So it is the sudden burning of free radicals, diba? Which is initiated by a spark or a flash produced when temperature rises until flash point is reached, diba? Mga flash over. This is the stage of development, the ignition temperature. Example, from the radiation until it reaches the ignition temperature that can create fire like in a conflagrating building. It sweeps the fire to the other side of the building, or what we call the flash over. Bali man ang inita good, di ba? Init yun siya kayo. So with that, with this fire, di ba? Once maabot na nato yung ignition temperature, so once mo scattered good ang fire dito. With that, sunog siya, especially for the buildings. Di ba? Unless kung mga those buildings are not covered by paints. Diba? What about kung na mga pental? Baga ba ka ng pental? Pag sudog, diba? Silaob na siya. Diba? From side to side. Sometimes you wonder, especially when I was in a marine. Diba? Marine. When I was in kantong marine pa matong courses on when I was in a marine course. So that was in Norso ko ato. So we have this familiarization, especially in firefighting. So with that, matingala ko kang anong and on the other side, muabot dito ang fire. Where in the walls, sirado yun. So, metal man. So, ang reason by ato is that once there is this heat, sa other side, magkainit po dito, sumudukot itong metal, ang yung pental dito, ang paint. So, mo dito siya dahil nanong sa pika side mo kalayo dito. Okay. The bite back. A fatal condition that takes place when the fire resists extinguishment operations and become stronger and bigger instead. So this occurs when there is a wrong firefighting or use of wrong extinguisher to a particular class of fire, such as in a fire involves oil or class B fire. So you cannot, or it is not advisable to use water. Diba? What will happen? So muna itong gitawag ng bite back. So in firefighting, especially you have the fire extinguisher. So kanakaroon. So if it is a class B fire, so you cannot use, maybe kung water-based na siya nga extinguisher, you cannot use water for that. Bakit mo scattered mo na? Okay, it can magnify the fire. So with that, the best step for that is that maybe for the di lang sa inyong balay nasunog because of the oil ba, di ba? So maybe you can use malay kung na kayo mga sand bucket, ba? Katong mga sand bucket ba nga ang balding na ay sand ka na, the best move, especially for the mga class C fire or class C fires. Yes, the mga electricity involves electricity. So di ta pwede ka use of water for that because water is the best conductor for that. So instead of that, maybe you can use sand. Diba? Kung sa pailain, diba? Okay, good. For the extinguishers, we have the class C extinguisher. So they use the dry chemical or powder for that. Okay, that is the bite back. The wrong, especially in firefighting, there is this wrong procedure or wrong use of extinguisher. So that is bite back. Mungkin ang pag there is fire, the first thing to move is to turn off the electrical source. Para sa firefighters, daon pa ng electricity diya, mas agad sila buga perting kurugan nila. Water is the best conductor. Flash fire. Flash fire, better known as dust explosion. So this may happen when the metal post that is completely covered with dust is going to be hit by lightning. Diba? Perhaps, kung ma-metal post na diya, covered by, especially if it is covered by paint, so no, wala siya, diba? Once it is hit by lightning. Diba? Okay, muna tagitawag na flash fire. Okay. And then for the 3 stages of fire, there is this incipient phase or initial stage. So under this stage, the following characteristics are observed. This has normally room temperature. The temperature at the base of the fire is 400 up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Degree Fahrenheit, The pyrolysis products are mostly water vapor and carbon dioxide. Small quantities of carbon monoxide and sulfides may be present. So that is for the incipient phase as the first stage for fire. And then for the second stage diya, so you init na kayo. So there is this what we call the free burning phase. It has the following characteristics. Accelerated pyrolysis process takes place. Development of convection current. So formation of thermal columns as heat rises. Temperatures is from 800 up to 1000 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, at the base of fire, diba? Or shall we say 1200 to 1600 degree Fahrenheit at ceiling. Or pyrolytic decomposition moves upward on the walls, crawling of the flame, leaving burn patterns, occurrence of flash over. Okay, that's for the free burning phase as well as the smoldering phase. So this stage has the following characteristics. Okay, the oxygen content drops to 10% or below, causing the flame to vanish and heat the development or the develop in layers. Products of incomplete combustion increase in volume, particularly carbon monoxide with an ignition temperature of 1125 degree Fahrenheit. Ceiling temperature is 1000 up to 1300 degree Fahrenheit. Heat and pressure in the room buildings up. Building room contains large quantities of superheated fuel under pressure but little oxygen. When sufficient supply of oxygen is introduced, backdraft occurs. Okay, na siya init. Okay, just observe the degree Fahrenheit lang nila. Okay, that is served as your keywords there. Okay, the classification of fire. Okay, very common. Based on cause, we have the natural causes. Diba? So kung may laing mga causes of fire, we have the natural. What else? So pailain ka, marinyo. Diba? Based on cause. Diba? The first one natin natural. Diba? So pailain cause. Perhaps kanang mga accidental, diba? O napatay mga intentional. So pa, napatay ka itong mga undetermined. Okay. For the natural fire, so example for the natural fire. Okay, letter na lang. Spontaneous heating, the automatic chemical reaction that results to spontaneous combustion due to autoignition of organic material. The gradual rising of heat in a confined space until ignition temperature is reached. Okay. That is for the natural cause. The spontaneous heating, the lightning. For the spontaneous, like there's what we call the mga bush fires, diba? From the woods, diba? From the dry materials or mga dry light materials such as papers, diba? Woods, dry leaves. For the lightning. Okay. A form of static electricity, a natural current with a great magnitude producing tremendous amperage and voltage. Lightning usually strikes objects that are better electrical conducts than air. It can cause fire directly or indirectly. So indirectly, when it strikes telephone and other transmission lines, that is indirectly causing an induced line surge. So that's for the indirect. For the direct, di niya, of course, katong direct heat siya dito sa mga kahoy. Okay. For the radiation of sunlight, when sunlight hits a concave, okay kanang mga gitawag ito nga shape curve inward or mirror, concentrating the light on a combustible material, thereby igniting it. Okay, that's for the radiation of sunlight. With the use of this either the concave glass or kanang gitawag na ito nga convex, mga magnifying glass na sila. Okay. For the accidental cause, for the natural, so di ba naamatay ka to mga radiation of the sun, mga especially mga volcanic eruption, di ba? Lightning. For the accidental cause, naatay electrical accidents, di ba? Purely. Second one is the purely accidental causes and negligence and other forms of human error. That's for the accidental cause, such as mga faulty electrical wirings. Diba? Or shall we say, mga any other negligence, such as something like maybe you are driving with your as a purely accidental cause, you are driving with your car and later on they overheat, kalayo. Okay, those are the accidental cause niya because it is man-made naman. Okay. What about for the intentional cause or the incendiary? Dire na, kanina siya medyo more on technical na tani or legal. If in the burned property there are preparations or traces of accelerant, plants, and trailers, then the cause of fire is intentional. Okay, intentional. So such as accelerant is the highly flammable chemicals that are used to facilitate flame propagation, as well as the plant, the preparation and or gathering of combustible materials needed to start a fire, and trailer is the preparation of flammable substances in order to spread the fire. So with these three causes niya with these three causes, so natay ka ng mga accelerant, mostly if there is an intention in setting a fire, so that constitutes arson na siya for the intentional. For the natural, there is no arson for that. For the accidental, no arson as well. But depende lang po siya sometimes kay basong ma-fall siya under the reckless arson, such as you are setting a fire, diba? Due to this hatred from your loved one, diba? Kalagot na kasi so you try to set fire on his pictures, mga love letters, diba? As the wind picks up, so there is this what we call the spread of fire. So the fire actually ni-spread na siya diya or ni-scatter na siya to the nearest mga balay siguro lang, siguro. So with that, nasunog ang balay. So dili ta makay nga it is accidental. So with that, maybe mapula siya under the reckless arson for the reason that it is because of your recklessness, diba? You set fire, so there is this intention of setting the fire of your own property, even if it is you have the intention to set fire with your own property, and yet you, because of that fire, it's scattered to the other property, so that constitutes arson. Di ka pa yung na kung aksidente na kung ako daog din, no, ha? So pwede na siya diya. Okay, pero with that, as I said, arson is a very crucial case, ha? It is very crucial to investigate because tanan ng possible evidence will be destroyed by the fire. Okay, so now let's move now to the arson investigative guide and process or procedures rather. So arson, diba? If we heard of or shall we say, if we talk about arson, there is this what we call the willful and malicious burning of all kinds of buildings and structures, including personal properties. That is for the arson, diba? And arson is punishable under the revised penal code as amended po na siya by virtue of Presidential Decree 1613. So investigation is an art that deals with the identity and location of the offender and provides evidence of his guilt in criminal proceedings. So if we combine the two, arson investigation, so it is a process that deals with the origin cause of the fire. So in the conduct of the investigation, the first one nila na buhaton is that, shall we say, for the conduct of the investigation, the first one to look on is the, especially with the origin, is not go directly to the intentional fire, but instead it is to the kanang gitawag nato sa natural gani lang unang lanto na not just necessarily the natural gani, but for the it is either kung unsa gud ihagong cause sa fire niya, rather the main cause gud niya. Either it is, well, as I said, the natural, maybe it is caused by maybe katong gitawag nato niya because of this reflection of the glass, tak mawala diha usa naman na siya mga intentional, di ba? So dili pa na sila mo go directly to the intentional, or shall we say, ito siya nga part of the fire. So who are arsonists? Kinsa man sila, di ba? So elements of arson actual burning took place also. Therefore, arsonist is a person who maliciously burns the property of another against the will of the owner, di ba? Siya diya, ha? So elements of arson actual burning took place. Actual burning is done with malicious intent, and the actual burning is done by person or persons legally and criminally liable. So here we go. So I have here a question for you. Yeah? Yeah, lang sa. Okay. Question. There was a quarrel between Angelo and Murphy. Since that out of superior strength, Angelo is more masculine and stronger than Murphy. Murphy believes that killing Angelo in a duel is not possible. Thus, one night while Angelo was sleeping in his bungalow house, Murphy sets fire to the house of the victim for the intention of killing him, and yet his intention was accomplished. So what crime is committed by Murphy? Okay, unsa man ang krimen na gi-commit ni Murphy? A. Arson with homicide. B. Arson. C. Murder. D. Arson and murder. Unsa kaha? Okay, let me call on kaning si Saga. What do you think is the answer for that question? Saga. What letter? Saga. Nasi Saga? Katulog ka, Saga? Or maybe, what about Lamina?
Sir, yes sir.
Kung kay answer,
Arson with murder, sir.
arson with,
Murder.
okay, so situation lang, di na may arson with murder dia. Lahat mo ng arson with murder, lahat mo ng arson and murder. Okay, ito, sige, tawag na to mga complex naman na, ha? Mga complex na mga will.
Kuan, sir.
Ang na mga compound crime. Complex crime is when we use the word with. In particular, it is a special complex crime. Okay, unsa man ang answer ka diya? What?
Arson with homicide.
Arson with homicide. Wow. What about Ilona?
Ilo na to answer, sir. Ako, sir.
What about Lamina? Ang imo ay Lamina.
Kuan, sir. Arson, sir.
Arson, imuha Veles. What about Veles?
Arson with homicide, sir. A.
Arson, homicide o Arqueliano. Arqueliano. Arqueliano, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, unsa kay answer? So, Arqueliano, unsa man?
Sir.
Oh, unsa answer ka?
Sa tong question, sir.
Okay na, oh. You can read it on your screen. Wala na kaga-follow. What about Saga? Or Ispartia?
Arson with homicide, sir.
Arson with homicide. So, okay lang, di ba? Consider as post question man na ako for you, ha? So, wala pa ta ka-gets kayo na kung unsa guna siya gyud, especially the arson with homicide. Well, you know what? If you talk of the arson with homicide, atong balay ning upat. If you talk of arson with homicide, there is no such thing like arson with homicide now, because in a crime involving arson and homicide, there is no such thing like a special crime for that. Dili na guna siya mahimkabo, because if you talk of special, not special, if you talk of special complex crime, rather, if you talk of complex crime, it is a single act constitutes two or more crimes. So wherein a crime is necessary to commit the another offense. Yeah, that is for the complex, in particular the special complex crime. Maybe not a rape with homicide, that is a special complex. So robbery with homicide. But for the arson with homicide, wala siya. There's no such thing like that. So therefore, dili na A, eliminate na to si A. The second one, arson. Arson is setting of fire to a building, di ba? With malicious intent. So basa na to ang atong situation. There was a quarrel between Angelo and Murphy. Since that medyo kusgan man kuno si Murphy, so there is no other means for Angelo to kill Murphy maybe by homicide, so duel ba kumbaga, no? So wala magilipot. So for him, maybe there is no other means for him to kill that, or there is no other way. So instead, while Murphy was sleeping in his bungalow house, o payag-payag ba niya na lang, diba, with that, so Angelo sets fire. Murphy, so Angelo was sleeping, si Angelo the rather, no? No, Murphy, Angelo is more. Okay. So instead, si Angelo de ang kusgan. So with that, so Murphy sets fire to the house of Angelo. Kay kusgan man si Angelo, there's no other way man for Murphy to kill Angelo by homicide or duel in a duel. So ang iyang intention is killing him. So, and yet his intention was accomplished, nga namatay gud si Angelo with the use of fire. So with that, niset siya og fire man, no? So napo siya intention, so therefore arson. So dili gyapon siya kay it involves killing man. Dili po siya mahimong murder and arson, di ba? Because the killing there is the mere intent. The mere intent is the killing of the victim of Angelo. So it is not the kuan, di ba? It is not the mere consequence, because if you talk of it is the mere consequence, maybe you can file as well as an arson. Base niya kay ang mere consequence niya dia is that the con man is the killing man. Is the mere intent niya is the killing. So therefore, there is this what we call instead murder. Okay, now you get na the situation kay baso maglibog yung money nga. No, murder, sir. It involves fire man. Because the setting of fire itself, it considered as one of the elements. Diba? There is this taking advantage to superiority naman na tulog ng tao imong dauban ng balay. So the setting of fire is considered as as treachery, as it is punishable by, of course, kanang murder na magina by the revised penal code, hand revised by virtue of katong mga death penalty na itong law 7969 7959 ito, di ba? So basta na ato di aron nakalimot ako sa particular law for that. So nagets na, nakuha lang na to, guys. No, it is not murder. So it is not arson with homicide because there is no such complex crime on the arson with homicide as well as arson, because ang lantaw na to dia is the mere consequence niya dia. If the mere consequence is the killing, di ba? So it is murder. But if the mere consequence is a result is not just if the mere intent there rather is the is the killing, if the mere intent is the killing, so there is this what we call murder for that. Pero ang iyang yung the mere intent is by setting fire, there is arson. Even if there is this killing, because killing there is the mere consequence naman na. Diba? Okay, katong patay di ang lawas, di ang nga dahil namatay ana is the mere, if it is the mere consequence, so there is no murder for that, but instead arson. Okay, kapaso maglibog na ng mga po sa board exam kay mo rin gawas ni during our board exam sa mga batch makalibog yun siya may utang arson guni, but no, setting of fire there is considered as an arson, diba? Unta, diba? Kaya naman ay fire sir, diba? Setting of fire. But if we refer to the murder, the setting of fire is considered as element na siya for murder. For the arson, mo na siyang iyahagang intention dia, diba? Kung sa arson dia na siya nga case. But for the murder, mo na siya dia nga na elemento na lang siya. One of the elements na lang siya. I-absorb man siya. It is absorbed by the murder. Okay, now the answer is, so may answer na ron. What is now the answer for that?
Murder, sir.
Okay, it is murder na dili na siya arson lang. What about this? Ano yung situation gano? Jonah and Jason are eventually husband and wife, and after the killing perpetrated by their known neighbor John, the latter sets a fire to the victim's house to hide the crime. Diba? As I said, no, if we talk of arson, it is very crucial for the reason that all of the pieces of evidence will be, or shall we say, yes, will be destroyed. Diba? Unfortunately, without the perpetrator's awareness, the house has a less than 2 days old infant. Diba? Sa iyang kalagot ni Jonah as well as Jason, he able to set fire. Diba? Not just set fire, but after niya nga napatay ng si John o Jason, he sets fire to hide the crime. Okay, without expecting that there was this infant inside the house while he was setting the fire. Wala siya kabalong na ito bata dito. Known to be the son of the victims o kanang infant. The child is perished in the fire as well as his parents' lifeless bodies. So what crime is committed by John? Unsa may commit ni John nga crime? A. Arson with homicide. B. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and homicide to the baby. C. The killing of Jonah and Jason was homicide and arson to the baby and the house. And D. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and the burning of the house and baby was arson. So sa kay answer ana karon. Iluna. What do you think? But
Different.
analyze the situation. Yes. Try to analyze
D,
this.
sir.
Letter
D.
D. D.
D, sir. D.
D. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder, and the burning of the house and baby was arson. What about Isparsha? Di man kay Luna.
Sir, B, sir.
Letter
The killing Joanna Jason. Murder.
letter
B.
B. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and homicide to the baby. Kaya nga homicide, okay, wala man ito sa iyang plano, no? Without his intent, patay itong bata, okay? Any other answer? Arqueliano.
A, sir.
Letter B.
Letter A, sir.
A. Arson with homicide. Wala lagi this. Eliminate na daan siya because there is no
Like Arson.
there's no complex crime na diya. Kana arson with blah blah blah. Wala tay complex crime ana ha. Separate case na siya. If you file for arson, arson. Kung ay homicide involved, file for homicide. So arson and homicide ana wala. There's no such thing like the complex lang diba. What about Velez? What is your possible answer for this?
D, sir. D.
D. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and the burning of the house and baby was arson.
Yes, sir.
Kisa pala ni si Lamina. What about Lamina?
Nine murder sa choices, sir.
Ha?
Nine murder sa choices.
Murder alone?
Yes, sir.
Wala murder alone sa choices. Diyo, basta ka dyan. That is why, kung mo take mo board exam, answer ako kung saan ay ako sa may wala may kahan dito answer amang may hagbungan mo sa board niya ha. Don't ask kanang wala diya. Ha? Just answer lang the question. Okay.
D, sir. D.
Bukan pa dyan, ay wala may murder lagi yan ha. Basta? Letter
Letter B. Letter B, sir.
B. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and homicide to the baby. Okay, now let's try to analyze the situation. Diba, as I said earlier, if the killing, diba, if the mere intent is killing, so therefore there is this murder, diba? But if the mere consequence is kanang gitawag na to nga kanang ang resulta niya is na ay namatay, so that is arson, diba? You are setting fire, diba? As the mere consequence natay mga dead body na nga namatay, so posibleng arson lang din siya, no? Okay. Kung na siya absorb maguna siyang killing dyan sa ato ang arson by virtue of Presidential Decree 1613, diba? Pero kung yung intention is to set fire lang alone, arson lang din na, diba? Kaya arson lang siya. Pero kung na siya gipatay diya, so like, let's say for example, kanina ka baby atong analyzer. Jonah and Jason are eventually husband and wife, and after the killing perpetrated by their neighbor John, so therefore gipatay na daan diya si Jonah and Jason. So they were dead already. Killed as perpetrated by John. So there is now murder. Gipatay naman niya, murder. And later on, so he sets fire. Diba? Si John, he sets fire. So therefore now, as the mere consequence of that setting fire, na may namatay diya, so the killing of the baby is the mere consequence. Killing of the baby is not a mere intent, but instead, it is a mere consequence. Okay, kuha na ha? So therefore, arson lang na siya alone. So wala na siya homicide. Kaya nga naman, diba, at first na natin murder, di na ito ilabtan ha. Murder may unang may tamo. Diba, we have now the murder. In particular, multiple murder doon na. Kaya doon na si Jonah and Jason, multiple murder. As filed. Wala siya unang kaso. Then for the second one, later on, he sets fire to the victim's house. Unfortunately, without the perpetrator's awareness that there was a baby inside the house. So wala siya kabalo nga na ay bata dito. So he sets fire as to hide the crime, his crime. So with that, the killing of the baby is not the mere intent. So it is the mere consequence. That is the result of setting the fire. So therefore, as the arson punishable by Presidential Decree 1613, so once the setting of fire is the mere intention and the killing of someone inside the house is the mere consequence, it is the arson alone will be filed. Dili ka maka-file kay nga naman ang iyang intention is to set fire man. So therefore arson with the intention. Kaso lang naalay na matay dito ha. That is based on the ruling of People versus Abayong. The ruling of People versus Abayong, wherein Abayong sets fire to the house of his family, the apartment. So by setting off the fire, as the mere intent is to burn the building, so but there were involved killings, killing of the owner of the house, of the tenants, murag tulo tong mga matay. So with that, as the ruling of the court, Abayong was actually he was charged for arson. Wala na yung mga murder, pwede ang mga homicide, wala na. Because such killing is a mere consequence. Muuman to yung result. So the killing is now absorbed by arson as by virtue of Section 5 of Presidential Decree 1613. But the thing is, ipabugat lang siya. As under the revised penal code 320 to 300 ko define dito ang arson naman yun, di ba? But the thing is, it is actually, or shall we say, gi-revise na siya by virtue of Presidential Decree 1613 to shall we say, to magnify the penalty. Gipadak-an nila mayo ang penalty. Gipabugatan niya dia. So naanatay death involved. For the arson involving killing, or shall we say, for the arson as killing, or shall we say, that involves kanang mga killing as a mere consequence, so that is now considered as a capital offense. So the punishment for that is reclusion perpetua up to death. Since that the death is temporarily prohibited na siya or suspended by virtue of Republic of 9346 from Gloria Mana Arroyo. So wala man tay, since that we do not have now the death penalty, so the punishment for that is only reclusion perpetua. So di lang to siya angay detayo na or kana ha. So that's for the ruling of People versus Abayong. Abayong tried to appeal that to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court sticks with the decision from the RTC. So wala gud niya gud kanang guto mo gito as is lang gyud siya sa iyang decision nga capital punishment gud ang imposed kay Abayong. Kay ang Abayong kuno lagi nga malag lang dili ko kuno siya gakuan or iya pud to. So now for the answer of this, it is letter, di ba atong tagibahig no? If we have now the murder, so posibleng answer eliminate na daan ng letter A. The possible answer is eliminate po na yung letter B. The killing of Jonah and Jason was homicide. So naamag siya intention for killing. So murder na guna admit, multiple, di ba? Multiple guna siya. And so eliminate na nato ang A and C. What about the B and D na lang? The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and homicide to the baby. Homicide man kay without the intention. But as for the intention of the perpetrator, it is to set fireman. So therefore, the setting of fire constitute arson because of his malicious intent, di ba? Okay, naman siya mga intention niya nga to set fire in order to hide the crime. Diba? So with that, eliminate na nato si letter B. Di man mahimong homicide to the baby. Di man na mahimo because of the fire. And the killing of the baby is the mere consequence. Result na siya sa fire. So therefore, the answer is letter D. The killing of Jonah and Jason was murder and the burning of the house and baby was arson. Unless kung iyang intention is to set fire in order to kill the baby, lahi na po na. Infanticide na na. Infanticide na na siya. na siya mo lagi na pero dito ko determine na siya dito sa korte. Sa court kumbaga so ang korte na bahala ana diya mo determine kung with regards sa mga motive niya diya, especially the motive. Lisod kay na pag-determine dito sa motive. Mo na ilang tawon. Intent is the accomplishment of an act. Motive is something that induces one to move. Kanang mga motibo. Okay. So now, any clarifications guys with regards to the situation? Nakuha ra? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay lang. Wala kalibgan?
Wala ra, sir.
Wala ra no? Okay. Kung ang usa ka tawo gisunog niya ng building niya to ay namatay, it is unsa man. Make it clarify lang before we proceed to the law and jurisprudence. Okay if someone sets fire to the building and later on he found out that someone was there and yet died in the fire, so unsa kay kaso ana nga i-file? Arson or murder? Laro na to daan before we leave. Hello?
Unsa to, sir? Yes, sir.
Shall we say, a situation someone sets fire to a building, maliciously done siya, it is maliciously done. Or in short, someone maliciously sets fire to a building, di ba and later on he didn't shall we say, or unfortunately then there was this man inside the building and yet dead in fire, diba? Or died in a fire. So unsa kay possible nga kaso ni set siya fire? Munta to yung intention and then later on na kuno niya nga naaday tawo dito nga wa na pero ug daw na patay na. Diba? Unsa kay kaso ana possible case to file for that?
Arson na, sir.
Arson lang, diba? Kaya nga namang arson.
Wala sa intention, sir.
Okay, because the killing of that person is not the mere intent. Okay, the mere intent there is the killing of the not just the killing is the setting of the fire and the killing is the mere consequence. Resulta naman tong pagkamatay atong tawhana diya sa sulod. Unless when you set fire with your intention to kill the person, so kana siya maoy murder pud na, hadli pud na mo yung nga murder with arson. Wala tay complex ana, so murder lagi na siya because the arson there is being absorbed na by the murder as a treachery. Okay or as one of the elements, di ba? Katulog ng tao din imong kanang importante imong gitaoban perting pataya. But if you set fire for your intent is to burn the building, di ba? Mura na siya imong intention is to burn the building and later on kung ay namatay dito someone has died in the fire or perished in the fire. So with that, killing or shall we say the dead body there cannot be used as the evidence for murder. But instead, it is a mere consequence, mere result na siya diya. So, i-absorb na po siya nga kasuwa to or shall we say homicide or murder is now absorbed by the arson na siya. Kigi-revise na mga nga balaod, di pa bukatan. Okay na klaro na. Okay now, so let's proceed now to the law on arson in the Philippines. Okay, the law on arson in the Philippines covered by Articles 320 and 326 of the Revised Penal Code as amended by Presidential Decree number 1613. Okay, as amended by as well as the Presidential Decree number 1744 and Section 50 of Rule 8 of the IRR of RA 6975, which provides that the Bureau of Fire Protection Protection shall have the power to investigate all cases of fires and if necessary, file the proper complaint with the city or provincial prosecutor who has jurisdiction over arson cases. Okay, muna siya mga law on arson. Mag-include sa mga revised penal code. What are these laws on arson? The first one is the Article 320 up to 326 of the revised penal code. defines arson and its forms and penalties. Okay, the first one, we have the Article 320, destructive arson. The penalty of reclusion temporal in its maximum period to reclusion perpetua shall be imposed upon any person who shall burn, burn any arsenal, shipyard, storehouse, or military powder or fireworks factory, ordnance, storehouse, archives, or general museum of the government, or shall burn any passenger train or motor vehicle in motion or vessel out of port. Diba? Included there, even if our motor vehicles, diba? Included na siya because our car or kanang mga any motor vehicles nato, it is the extension of our house man kuno na siya. Diba? That's why when you set fire to that, so it constitutes arson. Diba? It dili siya necessarily, it is not literally as motor vehicle in motion nga andar, not necessarily, but the thing is it is working, diba? Nga imong motor gigamit adlaw-adlaw din gidauban, so that constitutes arson. Okay ha? Okay, naklaro lang?
Ay, kalap dito.
Hello?
Sir.
Ay, kalap
Clara? Okay. What about kaning uban dre?
Wala sir, wala sir.
Sir, sir.
Sige,
Okay na
sige.
sir.
Okay. In okay, or shall we say for the third one, in an inhabited place, any storehouse or factory or inflammable or explosive materials. So that constitutes destructive arson. Diba? Kaso lang, it is revised na siya. Amend naman siya. But before, muna ang kaso niya reclusion temporal, which is reclusion temporal from 12 years to 20 years. You must to master that ha, or memorize the kaning mga penalties nato diya, especially katong sa afflictive penalties. For the afflictive penalties, since that we do not have now the death penalties, so magsugod lang ta sa reclusion perpetua down to prison mayor. Okay, amora prison mayor na siya. Okay, for the prison mayor, it is 6 years to 12 years. And then for the reclusion temporal, 12 years to 20 years. And for the reclusion perpetua, 20 years to 40 years. I-amend na niya.
Ay, balilaan na.
Ang pag-revise lang ani niya is to death man to niya ang destructive arson. Diba to? Balik lang yapon siya sa perpetua. Okay. Nabalik na siya sa perpetua. For Article 321, other forms of arson. So when the arson consists in the burning of the other property and under the circumstances given hereunder, the offender shall be punishable by reclusion temporal or reclusion perpetua. So either with the conjunctive word niya dia. Okay ha? The or, kanang or. So it is either reclusion temporal or perpetua. If the offender shall set fire to any building or farmhouse, warehouse, hut, shelter, or vessel in port, knowing it to be occupied at the time by one or more persons. Okay. Reclusion perpetua. If the building burned is a public building and value of the damage caused exceeds 6,000 pesos. So for that, so ang iyang punishment dia is from gikan ta dia sa as the minimum of reclusion temporal. So 20 years. Okay, hold on. Nawala akong presentation guys, no? Nawala guys.
Nawala.
Okay,
Wala sir, wala sir.
return dito. So hold on. How is that? Klaro na?
Okay na sir, okay sir.
Ha?
Yes sir.
Okay. If the building burned is a public building and the purpose is to destroy evidence kept therein to be used in instituting prosecution for the punishment of violators of the law, irrespective of the amount of damage. And what else? If the building burned is public building and the purpose is to destroy evidence kept therein to be used in legislative, judicial, or administrative proceedings, irrespective of the amount of the damage, provided, however, that if the evidence destroyed is to be used against the defendant for the prosecution of any crime punishable under existing laws, the penalty shall be reclusion perpetua. Okay. If the arson shall have been committed with the intention of collecting under an insurance policy against loss or damage by fire, mostly manggod, especially in the building, diba, they set fire for the purpose of claiming the kanang mga insurance niya. Muna siya ginabantayan with sa firefighters nato. Kanang mga old buildings na, di ba? Ginabulungan ko na nila. But they didn't jump up actually or immediately to the conclusion that it is arson. The purpose of this is to claim the insurance. Dili ko na siya. The first thing is to look on the nature cause of fire. Mugli una lang tao nila, bason na ikon na diya, not directly to the accidental ba po, that una nature ba na siya, the nature cause. Second one might be the accidental, maybe accidental ba ni, kung ako'y makita diya na siyang intentional na siya, probably baka wala good. Pero kung wala ako'y makita, mostly they just jump up to the faulty electrical wirings. Pagka nakita ko itong mga undetermined ba diya fire back baga, no? Or maybe kung madili sa accidental, mga faulty mo ng accidental. Okay. For the reclusion temporal, inhabited house or any other building in which people are accustomed to meet is set on fire and the culprit did not know that such house or building was occupied at the time, or if he shall set fire to a moving freight train or motor vehicle and the value of the damage caused exceeds 6,000 pesos, so that is punishable by reclusion temporal. Okay, if the value of the damage caused in paragraph B of the preceding subdivision does not exceed 6,000 pesos, and if a farm, sugar mill, cane mill, mill central, bamboo woods, or any similar plantation is set on fire and the damage caused exceeds 6,000 pesos, and if grain fields, pasture lands, or forests or plantings are set on fire and the damage caused exceeds 6,000 pesos. Okay, that's for the reclusion temporal. For the prisión mayor is from 6 years to 12 years. Okay, that's for the prisión mayor. If the value of the damage caused in the case mentioned in the paragraph A and D in the next preceding subdivision does not exceed 6,000 pesos, or if the building not used as a dwelling or place of assembly located in a populated place is set on fire and damage caused exceeds 6,000 pesos, so that is prisión mayor. I-memorize niyo na ha, especially the mga penalties niya. For the prisión correctional, in its maximum period to prisión mayor in its medium period. For the prisión correctional, it is punishable from 6 months to 6 years. Okay, nakuha na ninyo diya, ha? Ito na. If a building used as dwelling located in an uninhabited place is set on fire and the damage caused exceeds 1,000 pesos only. So 1,000 pesos only. if the value or the damage caused in the case mentioned in paragraph C and D of subdivision 2 of this article does not exceed 200 pesos. The next one, the operation correctional in its medium period to operation mayor in its minimum period when the damage cost is over 200 pesos but not exceed 1,000 pesos. And the property referred to in paragraph A of the preceding subdivision is set on fire, but when the value of such property does not exceed 200 pesos. The penalty next lower in degree than that prescribed in this subdivision shall be imposed. Okay, for the penalty of Arson correctional in its medium and maximum periods, if the damage caused in the case mentioned in the paragraph B of the subdivision 3 of this article does not exceed 6,000 pesos but is over 200 pesos. Okay. For the operation correctional in its minimum and medium periods, if the damage caused in the case mentioned paragraph B subdivision 3 of this article does not exceed 200 pesos. And the penalty of Aristo Mayor, okay, for the Aristo Mayor, pila man na siya. Maybe it is from 1 month to 6 months because the operation correctional is from 6 months to 6 years man. Diba? And then 6 years to 12 years is for the operation mayor, and so on and so forth na. The penalty of Aristo Mayor or from 30 days up to 6 months and a fine ranging from 50 to 100 per centum if the damage cost shall be imposed when the property burned consists of grain fields, pasture lands, forests, or plantations when the value of such property does not exceed 200 pesos. Okay, for the article 322. Cases of arson not included in the preceding articles. Cases of arson not included in the next preceding articles shall be punished. Okay, shall be punished by Aristo Mayor in its medium and maximum periods when the damage cost does not exceed 50 pesos. Okay, more mabasa naman ito lang guys. Okay, now so in short, di ba mostly as we observed with regards to the fine, bali lang yung gamaya. Diba? Imagine that. For the fine of 50 pesos or maybe not ranging 200 pesos or more than 200 pesos but not more than 100 pesos, di ba? Medyo mga gagmay lang kayo, no? Gagmay lang kayo ang mga fine. Because before, the revised penal code took effect on January 1st, 1932. So it was created on January 1, 1932. So bali ng dugaya kayo, imagine that. In 1932, diba? Kana siguro imong 5 pesos din dako na kayo. How much more ka na 200 pesos? Especially in libel case, diba? Under this code. So it is the imprisonment or fine. For the libel, diba? Ang imprisonment niya diya sa bato iya murag light naman to. So maybe not more than 6 months man dagay na siya for the libel. But for the fine is only 200 pesos. Imagine, diba, kung wala kay kabayad, there is this what we call the imprisonment. So for the imprisonment, that is the naman tayo gitawagan na nga pecuniary penalty or the subsidiary penalty or other, diba? Kanang if you cannot pay the fine, so you can shall we say, if you cannot pay the fine, so you can serve the sentence. And before 8 pesos per day. Okay, sa imong 200 pesos pila man nakadlaw siguro nimo nga serve. Diba? O muna siya sa una. Okay, sa una ang 200 ako na muna tayo. But now, imagine 200 pesos is just order siguro sa imong McDo. Muna wala mo nila na-revise na. So with that, gi-revise na lang nila ni siya by virtue of, in short, anitanan ha, by virtue of Presidential Decree 1613. So gi-revise na siya diya. I-amend na siya tanan katong such as katong mga destructive crime punishable by death na to. Diba? Punishable by death. Since that we do not have death penalty, so nabalik lang siya sa reclusion perpetua. Okay. For the Article 323, arson of property of small value. O, napaday ni. Imagine this. The arson of any uninhabited hut, storehouse, barn, shed, or any other property, the value of which does not exceed 25 pesos, committed at a time or under circumstances which clearly exclude all saan naman to? Okay. Exclude of okay. Wala ko guys, hold on sa monitor. Dara dyan, move na no? Okay, double mo actually I'm using 2 phones ni siya tanan. Cellphone sa ganang gigamit because of the problem of my laptop now. So but still okay lang. Hindi mo gusahay ayun na monitor as well as the screen. So move na siya. Stuck man. Okay. For the Article 323, okay, arson of small value. Okay, imagine this which is not exceed 20 pesos ang iyang value. Diba? So sa una ko karon, diba? From before ko no, ang balay, which is the property or the value of the house, but also na dyan barn or store 20 pesos. 3, the Arson revised total destruction. Any persons cause destruction by means of explosion, discharge of electric current, inundation, sinking or stranding of a vessel, intentional damaging of the engine of said vessel, taking off the rails from a railway track, maliciously changing railway signs for the safety of removing trains, destroying telegraph wires and telegraph posts, so on and so forth. That's for the crime involving this action. As well as kaning burn as means to commit arson, and Article 326, setting fire to property exclusively owned by the offender. Okay, muna na sila diyan mga okay. In cases where death resulted as a consequence of arson, if death resulted as a consequence of arson committed on any of the properties and under any of the circumstances mentioned in the preceding articles, the court shall impose penalty. Okay, muna na siya as Article 326, and under Republic Article 326 paragraph B, the prima facie evidence of arson. So if you talk of prima facie evidence, it is some kind of an evidence that can stand alone unless when it is rebutted. This such as in a burning building. As for the investigator to look on the nature cause of the fire, if there is this kanang gitawag nato nga mga chaos, mga casements, mga sources that can be used to set fire, di ba? Posible na siya nga intentional fire might be occurred, di ba? It is an intentional fire. Ano man kay especially in a room, di ba? The nature of the room is kuan lang kanang wala gud siya mga like wala gud siya mga cans for dili gud siya gi-store kana nga room is not stored by the gasoline, kerosene, diba? Other flammable fluid, di ba? Or fuel. So with that, kung makita na to ng kandya, so the investigator might jump up to the possibility that it has an arson. Na arson dyan nga naitabo. Okay. Ano sa? Ginawa sa baling kakuya. Okay. So now for the Presidential Decree 1613, the law amending the law on arson, defining the prima facie evidence of arson. Okay, muna siya dagam. Actually, dagam man ni kamar man lagi katagri. Okay. Especially to the penalty. For the Republic Act 7659, an act to impose death penalty on certain heinous crimes, amending for that purpose the revised penal code as amended, other special laws, and for other purposes. So here, diba, in this law, as under this Republic Act 7659, so the destructive arson, diba, from revised penal code, it was like the penalty is from the minimum of reclusion temporal up to the maximum of reclusion perpetua or life sentence. But because of this law, gi-amend na yung revised penal code. Gi-under na siya ang destructive crime or arson is now can be punishable by death. I-death na siya. Dili na siya kato mga life sentence lang. Okay, Republic Act 6975 under Section 54 provides that the Fire Bureau shall have the power to investigate all causes of fires and, if necessary, file the proper complaint with the city or provincial prosecutor who has